Bienvenue, mes amis. Welcome to another episode of Bonjour and all that. Remember, this is the video series that the Spanish Club at Ukulele High School in Birdsnot, Kentucky does not want you to see. All right, so what is our French lesson today all about? Well, it's going to be all about conjugation, and more specifically, conjugation of the verb être. All right, and être means to be. It's one of the four main basic verbs of the French language, so I'm excited to be able to share that with you today. All right, but conjugation. What is conjugation? Let me show you the definition. Conjugation is the process by which the infinitive is modified according to person and number to produce forms that convey the meaning of a particular tense. All right, does that make sense to you? It's a good definition, but conjugation is really one of those things that it's easier for me to show you what it is than it is for me to tell you what it is. So let me show you. Okay. We're going to start out in English and then we'll transfer over to French because I think it'll be easier that way to show you where we are in English. And then that'll make it easier for you to understand the French, I hope. All right. So again, I've chosen the verb to be. It's one of the basic verbs in English, as it is in French. All right. And I've got my table set up here. Just let me explain to you what the different parts are. All right. I have my singular and plural. That's the number. We call it number. It just means is the verb form singular or plural. And then I have my 1, 2, 3. These are my persons. So it means, am I talking about first person, second person, or third person? Okay. So now I've got to be, and that in English is called an infinitive. All right. The infinitive verb form is where you start for all conjugation. Okay. And in English, we have a two-word infinitive. It's always preceded by the word to. So to be, to see, to jump, to eat. All of those are infinitive forms of verbs in English. Okay. Now, what do I do next when I conjugate? Well, I take my persons and my number and I give them each their proper subject pronoun. And so here we go. Remember, first person is the person that is person that is me. So when I talk about myself in the singular, I use the pronoun I. When I talk about myself in a group or plural, I use the pronoun we. Second person is the person you are talking to. So if I'm talking to one person, I use the pronoun you. If I'm talking to a group of people, unfortunately, I use the same pronoun, you, which makes it kind of confusing because sometimes in English we can't tell if you mean you're talking to one person or you're talking to a group. That's why for the second person plural form, we come up with expressions like you all or you guys, so that we can make it clear that we're talking to a group of people. All right, then third person is the person you are talking about. Okay? So if I'm talking about someone, I would use the pronoun he. If I'm talking about a feminine person, a woman or a girl, I would say she. And if I'm talking about a thing, I would say it. Third person plural, if I'm talking about a group of men or boys, or a group of women or girls, or a group of things, I use the pronoun they. All right. If you want to see a more in-depth explanation of all this, you might want to look at my video on subject pronouns. It's a doozy, and it'll, like I said, go into a little bit more depth about first, second, third person, singular, and plural. Okay. Now I'm going to take the verb to be, and I'm going to give it a form that I can use with each subject pronoun to communicate that verb. All right. So to be is an irregular verb, which means there's not going to be a pattern to these verb forms like there normally is. So that's why we call it irregular, because the verb forms don't follow a pattern. But you know them well. They are I am, you are, he is. You could also say she is or it is. We are, you are, they are. And this is the conjugation of the verb to be in the present tense in English. Now see, you already knew this. You just may not realize that it was conjugation. Okay. But you didn't come here to learn this verb in English. You came to learn it in French. And it's a very important verb because this is the verb we use mainly for description. Okay. And that's the same in French. So let's go to French. And again, we have the same kind of setup. I have my singular and plural. This is called the number of the verb form. I have my first, second, and third persons. And I have my infinitive. But notice, in French, the infinitive is a single word. Être. That's how you say to be. Être. And notice it is not être. It is not a two-syllable word. It is one syllable. It ends on the R sound. So please say être. All right. Now, just as I did in English, I'm going to assign the proper verb subject pronoun to each verb form. And here they are, again in French. All right. When I'm talking about myself in the singular in French, I say je. When I'm talking about myself in the plural, I say nous. That's I and we. When I'm talking to someone in French, one person, I say tu. If I'm talking to a group of people in French, I say vous. And if I'm talking about someone in French, in the singular, I will say il. That means he. The feminine form is elle. Okay? So, I would use that if I'm talking about a woman or a girl. In French, I really don't have a pronoun for it. In French, if the word is a masculine noun, we will use il to say it. And if it's a feminine noun, we'll use elle to say it. Okay, and then third person plural, if I'm talking about a group of people in French, I will say il, all right, with an S, or elle with an S. But notice we don't hear that S. So in French, it can get a little bit confusing in the third person because the singular and plural pronouns sound alike, although they are spelled differently. All right. Now I'm going to take the verb être, and I'm going to give it each of these subject pronouns a verb form for être. And just like in English, être in French is irregular, which means there's not going to be a pattern for the verb forms as there are with other verbs. So these are forms that just have to be memorized. Okay? So if I want to say I am in French, I say je suis. Notice the final S is not pronounced. If I want to say you are in French, I will say tu es. A. Notice again the S is not pronounced. Third person singular. If I want to say he is, I will say il est. Now notice the second person singular, the third person singular forms both sound alike, a, but they're spelled differently. But beside the E, none of those consonants are pronounced. Not the S in tu, not the ST with il. And of course for L it would be LA also. All right, the form that goes with nous, and that means we are, would be nous sommes. Again, the final S is not pronounced. Second person plural, talking to a group of people, you are, vous êtes. Notice that the first E does have an accent, the circumflex, just like the E in the infinitive. All right? And again, the final S is not pronounced. And then also, now, finally, the third person plural form, which means they are, is going to be ils sont. Notice I hear neither the N nor the T. But because that O is followed by an N, which is a nasal consonant, I get to use a beautiful nasal sound. On, ils sont. All right, but I don't say ils sont. We don't hear the N. Ils sont. And if you want to use L, E-L-L-E-S, you would use the same form, elles sont. So it's je suis, tu es, il est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils sont. All right, this is how we say to be or communicate to be in French. All right. I have a little activity I want us to do to help us practice these forms in actual sentences. All right. In that blank space, we're going to put the correct form of être in French, and then we'll translate it in English. All right. After je, I always use suis, je suis, and this would translate as I am American. Je suis américain. All right. For tu, did you say es? Good. Tu es allemande. All right. And allemande is the feminine version of allemand, which means German. You are German. So sometimes here I use masculine adjectives or feminine adjectives just to mix it up. All right. Il. Okay. Il est. Right. E-S-T. Il est japonais, which means he is Japanese. Okay, now I do want you to notice here that, remember, in French, the adjective has to match the gender of the subject pronoun. So what I'm telling you here was je suis américain. Okay, I'm using the masculine singular form, so I'm telling you that je here is masculine. And here I have the feminine singular form, allemande. That's going to tell you this tu, or the you I'm talking to, is a woman or a girl. It's feminine. And likewise, il here, that again is the masculine form. All right. And so my adjective has to be the masculine singular form. All right. All right. We go on. Elle. Okay. Which means she. I want to say she is Canadian. Elle est canadienne. Okay, nous, this means we. Okay, the form that goes with nous is nous sommes espagnols, which means we are Spanish. Vous is vous êtes anglaise. You all or you are English. Il with an S, third person plural, so I'm going to say ils sont mexicains. They are Mexican. And elle, with an S, again, is sont japonaises. They are Japanese. Okay, so there you go. The forms of the verb être, which means to be. And now you have the power to start doing some very great descriptions in French. So, I hope you've enjoyed this video lesson. I know I've enjoyed sharing it with you. So go out and describe using the verb être. Okay? I'll see you later, my friends. À bientôt.